Godrej Properties posted its third quarter numbers yesterday. Revenues were down 9% at 242 crore rupees. It did, however, post a marginal increase in its net profits, a rise of just about 5% though. Joining me now is Pirojsha Godrej, MD and CEO at Godrej Properties. Pirojsha, good morning. Let's begin with your performance itself in the third quarter. Sales growth has been weak. How would you really describe the business environment and how things are panning out on ground?
Good to be with you, Tanvi. Yes, I think the quarter in some ways has been a little bit tough, but I think, the reported revenue that we've had, which has seen a 5% year-on-year decline, is largely because we didn't have any new projects entering the revenue recognition threshold this quarter. We expect several to next quarter, so I think we'll see a big uptick in revenues. But I think broadly speaking, we're quite happy with the performance of the company given the tough macro environment and given the tough sector environment. Our actual sales in the quarter in terms of values have increased by about 29% quarter on quarter to about 430 crore. Our net profit for the quarter has increased about 5% and our EBITDA has increased over 20%. So I think the numbers have been decent, but certainly we'd expect better numbers in the quarters ahead. If you look at the 9 months gone by this financial year, which I think of course has been again a tough period for the sector, we're quite happy with the numbers. Our top line has grown by about 12%, our EBITDA by about 40% and our net profit by about 30%. So again, given the current environment is a little bit weak, that is quite encouraging. But I think 2014 we expect will be a much better year both for the sector and for Godrej Properties. For the sector, we hope things like the general election in April and May will be a trigger for better improvement in economic performance and consumer sentiment. And certainly from a Godrej Properties perspective, we have a large number of launches lined up in various parts of the country that we think can strongly drive our growth this year.
But Pirojsha, it looks like we may be looking at a longer high interest rate cycle. How concerned are you about that?
Well, certainly I think, as a developer, we'd obviously like to see interest rates coming down. I think it benefits us both from a direct cost of borrowing perspective, more importantly from a consumer demand perspective. That said, I think what the new governor has done is brought about a level of seriousness and credibility in a short amount of time that is quite impressive. And I think his statements yesterday during the policy notice were that he doesn't believe that it's likely that interest rates will have to increase much from here. So we're quite hopeful that after staying steady for a few months, we can start to see interest rate declines. And I think that, of course, will be a big boost for the sector. And it's more a matter of when than if. And of course, the sooner that comes, the better. But as I mentioned, the other very positive trigger that we're quite optimistic about is the general elections. And I think, real estate ultimately is a very sentiment-driven sector. So if the sentiment of people in the economy, if customers for real estate improves, we can see quite a sharp improvement in actual sales for real estate, even before interest rates start to come down.
In the beginning, Pirojsha, you mentioned that there was not too much of inventory that hit the markets in the quarter gone by. Give us a sense of what is your project pipeline for the next couple of quarters then?
As I mentioned, the launch pipeline for us is looking quite attractive. Of course, the exact timeline of these launches is dependent on full regulatory approvals coming through, which always remains a little unpredictable in India. But I think the launches that we're hoping to execute over the next few months and certainly within this calendar year include a number of very exciting launches here in Mumbai. We have two very interesting redevelopment projects in Chembur, which as a destination is doing very well, especially given some of the new infrastructure that is increasing the centrality of that location. We have an exciting new township project that we hope to launch near the new upcoming airport in Panvel. And we have a large phase of our project in Vikhroli, all of which will be launched this calendar year. We also have launches planned in other parts of the country. So we have new projects that we'll be launching in places like Gurgaon, Bangalore, Pune. We also have a variety of cities where we'll see new phase launches in places like Ahmedabad, Nagpur, Kolkata and elsewhere. So I think the launch pipeline at this stage looks very healthy and we hope to execute these launches as soon as we can.
What does then that really mean then in terms of addition to your revenue, say, in the next 1 year?
Well, we don't like to give any specific guidance. There certainly, we expect, can be robust growth going forward. We have several projects which have already been launched where we have already had substantial sales in projects like our project in Gurgaon, Godrej Summit, where we sold 1 million square feet in a single day. Our project Godrej BKC, where we now have almost 600 crores worth of sales already completed, and many other such projects where revenue recognition has yet to happen. So as these projects start entering the P&L, we should see strong growth in revenues. And of course, we also, as I mentioned, have a large number of new launches where we will aspire to bring those to the revenue recognition threshold as soon as we can.
For the industry itself and also for Godrej Properties, give us a sense of where do you first see revival really taking place? Is it commercial, residential, premium, affordable? Which category would drive it?
Well, I think, growth is possible in each of those. I think certainly the commercial market in India has gone through a fairly long down cycle now. So this is not something that's happened in the last year, but rather in the last 3 or 4 years. I expect that to balance itself out over the next couple of years, because not too many developers have been committing new commercial launches over the last couple of years. So as the current supply, which is in excess of the current demand, gets absorbed, I do expect a period where about 2 years from now there will be again a period where the supply is unable to meet the demand. So that's the outlook I have for commercial real estate. For the residential segment, I think the affordable parts of it are already doing reasonably well. Certainly, and I think the premium residential has been quite sluggish. And I think the biggest change for that is going to be an improvement in the sentiment of consumers. And that could come about, as I said, through a positive election outcome or through interest rates coming down. But a renewed sense of confidence clearly is required. And I think we shouldn't be too surprised that real estate volumes have fallen. The GDP growth in the country has come down from 8 to 9% to 4 to 5%, which clearly is a very substantial weakening. And real estate, being such a sentiment-driven industry, is one that is bound to be affected. But again, our level of confidence for the medium-term and long-term prospects of the sector remain extremely strong. I think the short-term prospects will depend on things like the elections and interest rates.
All right, then let's leave it there at that optimistic note. Pirojsha, Godrej, thank you for taking the time out. That was Godrej Properties with their outlook for business in the coming quarters. Time now for a quick break, but on the other side, Madhav Dar of GT